Hello and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast for wine lovers and the wine curious, where we love nothing more than meeting the fascinating people behind the label of delicious wines. One of my favorite things is learning how people got into wine and the different paths that led them to winemaking. Over the years, doing our podcast and before that with our In Wine Country television show, we've talked to engineers and tech titans turned vintners, rock musicians and emergency room physicians turned winemakers. But today we get to meet two actors who make, promote, and sell their wine between acting and directing and producing gigs. Both of these passions and careers sound pretty awesome to me. They are Matt and Carolina Espiro Jaeger, and we're excited to hear their story of starting their own winery and the two labels that they've created there. And spoiler alert, it begins with romance. We are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
I'm Mary Orlin. Are you a fool for wine? Mary Babbitt and I sure are, and our guests today, Matt and Carolina, are too. While they take wine seriously, this couple also shows that wine can be fun, full of jesters and lore. Matt and Carolina both have day jobs as actors, a profession they've been working in for years. You've heard folks say to some people who have side gigs, don't quit your day job just yet. Well, based on what we've tried from the Fuil and Tabla wines, we'd say, hey, give it a go. From acting to winemaking, it's not a unique story, but in this case, Matt and Carolina's screenplay is full of passion, wine country romance, and determination without a marquee Hollywood name. While launching a new wine label, especially during the pandemic, is never easy, the early reviews for Fuil have been notably good. We're excited to introduce you to these wines and Matt and Carolina, who share how they balance their dual roles. Matt and Carolina, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Great to be here.
And, Matt, the way you and I got connected is fairly recently. There's a new wine community called Grape Loop, and it's a networking community. It's a community where winemakers, journalists, other folks can go and exchange ideas, get resources, whatever. And when I joined in the past couple of months, when you join, you put up your bio, what you do and everything. And you reached out to me, and then we had a chat, and here you are.
Yeah. And I have to say, Grape Loop's been really good for that. I've been able to use it to reach out to other winemakers when I have questions. I found a new wax source because our bottles are hand waxed. Yeah, and I'm really glad that we got to connect as well.
Me too.
Well, and being relatively new to the wine world, those kinds of communities and resources, I imagine, are pretty darn important. But speaking of getting into wine, I'd love to hear how you guys landed in the world of wine while also doing acting, directing, producing. You sound really busy. As we get to hear your story, would you start with kind of your backgrounds?
Yeah. You want me to go? Okay.
Yeah.
I was born in Chile. My family came here to LA when I was 2 years old. And but in our culture, wine has always been a very kind of casual part of our lives, in that it was kind of just part of, a beverage that you would have with dinner. And it wasn't something that was like, even as a child, it wasn't something that was locked away from children. They would share a sip or share a small glass during holidays or celebrations. And something that I had noticed recently that was very different from other childhoods, where kids were kind of locked away from that. And then by the time they got into adulthood, they just ran into, until they get wasted. And for me, I was just like, I don't need to. I mean, not that I didn't. I was young, but there wasn't that need to get into that locked cellar. So, but with that, I feel wine was just part of the culture, really, as part of our everyday life. It wasn't until I got older and, began searching for that day job while pursuing acting. I became a bartender, and I had to learn what we were selling. I had to try the wine, learn about it. And that's when I really started to scrutinize it in a way, and kind of make these choices of what were my favorites, and also be able to know it well enough where I can kind of, talk to a guest and say, I really think you would like this Cab Franc or something like that. And then around here I meet Matt. So
So I guess I'll jump
why
in
don't
and
you jump in?
catch up to the intersection. I had a very different upbringing. I grew up in rural Wisconsin, in a family that really alcohol did not play much of a part. On both of my parents' sides, alcohol has we'll say, checkered past with my family. So drinking was not something that was done very common. And in Wisconsin, it's very much beer and brat country. And so people, they more drink the alcohol for the alcohol than the drink, as it were. That's changing now, but when I was growing up, that was very true. But my dad is an infinitely curious man. And so when I was in high school, he took a wine appreciation course, and it was something that really struck me. I would watch him. He had to drink a bottle of wine a week, which for us was a lot of wine to drink in a week. Looking back, I'm like, it's really not anything.
That's a Wednesday night. I'm just kidding.
But he would look at the type of closure it had. He would look at the type of glass it was in. He would pour it, look at the color, everything that we do when we are appreciating a bottle of wine. And not having seen somebody treat, in general, food, but especially an alcoholic beverage like that, that really struck me. And so I got very interested in why wine was different. And my first legal drink when I turned 21 at midnight was a glass of wine with my family in a nice restaurant. And when I came out here, I also worked in fine dining restaurants. I worked in catering as a side job, again, as I was coming up as an actor. And I started becoming, like, because I was interested, I was the guy people would go to ask about the wine, because they knew that I'd probably read up on it. I probably studied it. So it was really interesting to me. And I would do these yearly trips to wine country in Santa Barbara County, which is not where we met, but is where we started dating.
Right. We met actually doing a Shakespeare play. And at the time they were it was a troupe that went from school to school doing different like Shakespeare skits, and they needed to replace their Juliet, and they needed to replace their understudy Romeo and another couple of roles. So we would all do multiple roles, but we were the only two members of this company, and we got paired together to do the Romeo and Juliet scene like over and over and over.
Oh, stop. That is so romantic.
I know.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, we were just friends at that time. He was with someone else. I was getting over a total jerk. And, but but there was definitely chemistry and a connection. But the spark didn't happen yet. It wasn't until I left for Chile for a year and came back when Matt approached me and said, "Hey, I'd love to catch up. And by the way, I have this trip up to wine country for my birthday. Do you want to come?" And
so I would invite a group of friends, and the deal was, I'll pay for the hotel. Whoever wants to come up. And I mean, this was like, you're talking mid to late 20s, even early 30s. So, we were all nobody had kids or anything like that. You get up in the morning. I'd usually get a suite at Svengard's Lodge in Solvang, and there'd be people in sleeping bags on the floor. There were 2 or 3 beds, but you'd see like 4 people piled onto the queen, and I'd be in the twin because I paid for the room, so I get my own bed. And I invited her on one of those trips in 2009.
And here's where I kind of see a different side of Matt, because before he was the actor and also very type A. He was the one who always came to rehearsal early. He was the one who knew everyone else's lines, and that person. And I was the one who was always a little bit late and, wasn't quite prepared. So we were very different personalities. And even though I might have looked at him and be like, oh, maybe, but I was like, oh man, I don't know if I could be with someone that like stringent. Like I would drive him nuts. He would drive me nuts. But we arrived in wine country, and I remember this so vividly. He stepped out of the car And he put his hands behind his head and took a big breath. And I saw everything just lift. His face brightened, and you could see this peace. And it was a completely different energy from him. I'd never seen it before.
Wow.
Changed.
Well, this is a one-way wine brings people together.
Yes, absolutely. And so I got to know a very different side of him as we kind of explored, wine country as a group. And that for me is when the spark hit. I don't know when it hit for you, but
Yeah, we came back from that trip and we had our first kiss and we started dating soon after. And a few years later, I proposed at a winery up there, Demetria Winery in Los Olivos, and we ended up getting married at Demetria. And
oh, wait, there's one little story you have to tell. So when we were there as friends, as a group, we were at Demetria, and it's a beautiful vineyard. I actually want to shoot my next film there.
Ooh.
And we were walking along as friends, and Matt and I kind of just spread off, separated from the group. And we were there, and I just kind of looked, and I'm like, oh man, this would be a beautiful place to get married. And he's like, yeah. And then we kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh, I mean, not like, we're just, and then we just kind of laughed at that, like the jokey awkwardness. But the irony that, a few years later, that's where he proposed. That is where we got married. It was all kind of like foreseen in that
Wow.
moment.
You planted the seed.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And Demetria is really where we started on the road to the winery as well.
Yes.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What was so you guys, you get together and you get married. When did the wine making come into it? Was that after you were already married? Well, before what?
So I have a list of things I'd like to do in my life. I keep it around so that I can, see kind of if I've hit the things. You get one life. I want to see if I can experience as much as I can. Similar to my father, I'm very, very curious. And winemaking was one of them. I wanted to make wine. I wanted to sell wine to people I would never meet who would enjoy it. And but I always thought that, I'm not a tech bro. I did not make several $1 million in my industry. And I'm like, well, if I ever hit it big as an actor, maybe I can buy a vineyard. And then I started asking around, and some of my favorite wineries, whether it be up in Sonoma or whether it be in Santa Barbara County or wherever, they sourced their grapes. They didn't have their own vineyard, and that kind of got me thinking. And then for my 40th, we went up to Santa Barbara. We stayed at Demetria for a week, and Carolina introduced me to all these wineries that I didn't know because Santa Barbara's growing so quickly. It's hard to keep up with all of them. And on top of that, it was the very end of harvest, and she set it up that in the morning I would help. Harry's now in Australia, but Harry Way, who had been winemaker there for about 16 years at the time, I would just help him in the morning when I'd get up because I tend to get up with the sun. So I'd go for a little walk in the vineyard, and then I'd meet him in the winery, and maybe I'd be spinning barrels or doing punch downs, and I just really enjoyed it. And I realized that winemaking is basically hard work with manual labor and a lot of problem solving and thinking things logically and sort of this weird combination. I call it alchemy because there's a lot of chemistry, but we don't know enough of the pieces to make it a simple paint by numbers. There's always just a little bit of like luck and magic that has to occur. And all of that fits me very well. I love blue collar. I love working with my hands. I obviously, as an actor, I like a little mystery and a little artistry. As Caroline has already mentioned, I'm very type A, so I like to get a lot of information and do things with that. And so when we came back from the trip, about a month or two later, I said, I think I want to try making wine. And her response was, oh, finally.
Well, from my perspective, when we talk, we always just kind of dreamed about like, oh, maybe we'll retire in wine country, or if we make it big, maybe we'll buy a winery. It was always like we would talk about this, and I could see the spark in his eye and the passion in his eye. And although we do enjoy the entertainment industry, being actors and all of that, I've never seen the joy that comes to him when we are up there and when he works with wine.
Wow.
So if you were talking about thinking of going into wine before that birthday trip, then I had no idea, because from my perspective, it was just kind of like a maybe. So when I
talked about going the sommelier route.
Yeah.
But that didn't have like that working with the hands aspect of
Right.
winemaking.
Yeah.
And so when I set up this surprise meet with the winemaker, and I'm like, so tomorrow morning you're gonna wake up at 5 a.m. and you're gonna go and meet Harry and you're gonna work with him in the winery. It sounds awful to me because I don't want to go there. I just want to drink it. But I knew he was just gonna love it, and just seeing his eyes light up after a day of hard work, I was like, I think this may be it. So when he finally said, I think I want to actually do this, I was like, absolutely. I feel like I've always known, no idea how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there. But
And that was right at the end of 2020. And I don't know if you remember Clubhouse, which got really popular during lockdown.
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
do, yeah.
totally. Right.
I started out on the entertainment ones, just to kind of keep the career going and keep my
Uh-huh.
connections. And then more and more I was gravitating into the wine rooms with winemakers and all of that. And I met some great winemakers in the Central Coast, especially in Santa Barbara County. And through them, I just took a day one time and went up and just met with all of them in person.
Hmm.
And then one of the women up there, her name's Kat Neenan. At the time, she was working for Refugio, but now she's moved on somewhere else. But she said, I know this guy, Dusty Nabor. He makes great wine. He has a great reputation. He makes it out of Camarillo, but he sources from up here, which sounds like that's what you want to do. And I was like, oh, yeah. Why don't you go meet with him? So she called, like she sent him a text right then and there. And he's like, yeah, I'm at the winery right now. Tell him to swing by on his way back. So I swung by, I chatted with him, and he's like, well, why do you want to make wine? Because I was talking about doing home winemaking, which he had already done. And I said, well, I want to make something like, I'm an actor, so I'm used to creating a work of art that people I never know will enjoy. And I find that very fulfilling. And he's like, well, if you want to do that, you should go commercial. Because if you're going to do home winemaking, you can't give it to people you don't know.
very
True.
And I was like, yeah, that's very true. And so he said, yeah, you could probably make wine out of here if you wanted to. And I said, okay, but I mean, if I'm going to be like working with you, I'd love to, come in and help you out so we can get to know each other. And that led to a year-long internship with Dusty for the whole year of 2021, from about January until November-ish when his harvest wrapped up. And at the end of 21, I did my harvest, which was all of 2 barrels of wine, and helped him with his harvest, which I think was probably 30 or 40 barrels of wine. And then at the end of the year, he's like, okay, you're done with your internship. Now you're making wine. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. And I
Well-
also enrolled in the certification program at UC Davis, which I just finished last month. And that's
and then time to pick a name, time to pick a label.
yeah.
Well, isn't this the most amazing thing about the wine industry? And I don't know if this is true in the acting world, that you can just pick up the phone and call somebody or ask them, can I come pick your brain or work a day with you in the winery? And people are so open about it and willing to share what they know and help you out.
Yeah, that was something that I really enjoyed about getting into the wine world. Entertainment, when you're like 18 to 22, can be like that. We're like, yeah, come on, check out the set. But in general, I have noticed, because the competition is so fierce, that is not, arms wide open is not necessarily how people would describe the entertainment industry. I've literally seen a winery lend their press to a direct competitor because their press broke down during harvest. And so
Wow.
they had to delay their harvest by a couple hours. And that is not something I have seen in the entertainment industry.
That's amazing. All right. Well, so you guys have Fuil wines, and you've got a couple labels. You have Tabla, which falls under Fuil. And
So, yeah, Fuil is the
so why don't you
winery.
explain that, and also the
Yeah.
name,
Okay.
like
So,
Fuil.
Fuil is an Irish Gaelic word. You can't see me on this podcast right now, but I am a very pale, ginger-colored man with lots of freckles, meaning I have a lot of Irish and Scottish and Welsh. And basically, if it's got Celtic roots, I come from there. And so when I started looking for a name, Fuil is a Gaelic word, which is the name for the language of the Celtic regions, but it means blood. But it means blood the way we talk about it in English. So it's not just what's in your veins, but it's your family, it's the land you come from, it's your passion, it's your temperament, all of that wrapped up. And I thought that really encapsulated the idea of a bottle of wine that encapsulates the time and place and everything that it was grown and made. And then Tabla, I'm going to say was, because there's a story coming up,
Mm.
was our more casual label. And tabla is also Gaelic. It means people around a table. It means the table. It means the people around a table. It also means them enjoying themselves around that table. It has all those connotations. And then there's also, if you're in Santiago, Chile, and you say, hey, ¿quieres compartir una tabla? Like, do you want to share a table? It means you want to order a board of food and split either a pitcher of beer or a bottle of wine and just sort of have a nice casual evening.
Oh, how fun.
Um,
Nice.
I did promise a story. So last July, and I'm sure everyone will recognize the name that I'm about to say because, and it's all good. I didn't sign an NDA and everything's been signed, but Tablas Creek out of Paso Robles sent us a cease and desist for the name Tabla.
Oh.
They don't have a copyright for the name Tabla, but they felt it was close enough to be an issue. And so I reached out to a lawyer to say, so is this even a thing? And the lawyer said, well, they have a case. It's not slam dunk. How much do you want to spend on this?
Mm.
And I said, well, they have a lot more money than me, so I don't think it would be good to go head to head. And so we took a couple months of going back and forth, and we came to an agreement where basically this next release is all under the name Fuil. I can sell off my old labels under Tabla, so I didn't have to like pull them off the shelves or anything like that. They gave me 18 months to kind of to get rid of what I currently have under Tabla. And so now it's still the white and the black label. It's just all under the name Fuil. And in a way that's actually been a blessing in disguise. It's helped us sort of simplify and streamline the marketing, which has been nice.
Right.
Sure.
And with our black and white label, we were able to continue the concept that we have where the black label or the white label, our tagline is when you want to make the wine about the night, and the black label is when you want to make the night about the wine. It's a way of kind of letting people know what they're looking for, go to which label you'd like.
Yeah. The white label is blends in a certain style. The black label is single varietal, single vineyard.
Yeah. So, and you all sent us a couple bottles to try. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love that, the white labels. It's your philosophy on that. So one of the wines you sent us is the Soles Nua. And on the label, it says chilled red wine. So tell me the inspiration, what the name means, and why put that on the label.
Yeah. Soles Nua is, again, Gaelic word. It means new light. And it's our summer wine. We usually release it around May 1st, which is May Day or Beltane in the old Celtic calendar, which is the celebration of the return of summer, basically, the return of the sun. And so new light seemed very appropriate for that. It came about because last year, after I'd done all my black label blends, I had some Mourvedre left over. I had some Viognier. And I thought I played with the idea of maybe doing like a non-vintage Rhone red style kind of like super fancy thing. So I did a test blend of what I had of the correct ratios of what I had left of the Viognier and the Mourvedre. And man, it was not a deep, dark, serious Rhone red. It was a light, fresh, almost Beaujolais Nouveau style wine. And I remember going into my office and laying on the couch and just going, okay, what am I going to do? This thing is too Nouveau to do. It's Nouveau. It's Nouveau. It's like a Nouveau style.
Right.
So I threw it in the fridge overnight to do like a chilled Nouveau style kind of thing. And we opened it up the next day.
And I'll just clarify, you mean Beaujolais Nouveau.
Beaujolais Nouveau, exactly. A Beaujolais Nouveau style. And so with that in mind, we turned it into a chilled red. And last year, we sold out of it, I think in 4 months. It went like hotcakes.
It was just so amazing watching this happen because it went from like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this wine. I don't like it. And it's, and we have experience from other winemakers. Well, they'll make a wine they don't like and then like, whatever, I'm just bottle it and whatever, but we don't have that luxury to just bottle whatever. And it's not part of what Matt wants. He will only sell wine that he loves. So he was in a pretty, I wouldn't say dark place, but not a happy place, not a Soles Nua place. So just when he all of a sudden got this inspiration, like stroke of genius, throwing the wine in there and then opening up with almost like this mad fervor and then putting it in and drinking is like, oh my God. And I tried it. I was like, babe, oh my God. And like, it was so amazing that he took something that he thought was going to fail into one of the most popular wines, the one that sold out, I think, the quickest.
Yeah.
And that's just magical. That was such a
Oh,
great experience.
well, and it's such a delicious, that word crushable wine, and it's perfect for going into the summer. I also love that it's lower in alcohol, 12.5%.
Yeah.
A red summer wine is really fun. It's not rosé, it's not a white, it's a red summer wine, and it's a chilled red, and that's great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's sort of what we've been hearing, and I've even had a few people who are just, I won't say they're sick of rosé, but they've had enough rosé and they want to kind of try something new for the summer. And the chilled reds, I mean, they're coming up anyway. Like chilled reds are becoming more and more popular,
Right.
and we try to bring a little bit of old world winemaking into the new winemaking style. And in Italy and in France, a chilled red is a very common thing. So
And it's such a beautiful color. That's what I love the most about it. It's just
Mhm.
beautiful. I love that shade.
yeah. So what
How,
you guys?
how would you describe the shade? What color would you call it?
Um,
I usually do like a ruby or garnet. Like I
yeah.
like ruby because there's got a little bit of jewel tone to it, which is why we put it in the clear
Mm.
glass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It matches with my skin. So if I can get a shirt with that color, I would wear it
There you
because
go.
it brings out my just
You might have to create some merch with a
yeah.
t-shirt in that color.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you guys, how do you balance the demands of your acting, producing, directing careers with winemaking and, running your own label? There's a lot there. And it seems to me that acting gigs come up and it sort of take over, right? That's at least my perception of it, not being an actor. But if something comes up and you get the part and it's like drop everything and go, how do you manage both worlds?
Well, I'm going to tell you straight honestly that we have sit across the table and go, how do we manage this life? Because we're going crazy. So answer is we don't know yet. And we're still kind of exploring. The great thing is there's two of us and we're really, really, really good team. We've always been that. As you know, we've been luckily where one of us is feeling overwhelmed and wants to crawl into a hole. The other one's feeling energized. It's almost kind of like marriage where they say marriage is not 50-50. You check in, where are you at? I'm at a 20. Okay, well, I got 80, so let's do this.
Yeah.
And that's what this kind of balance has been, how we've been kind of managing that balance. There's still so much we have to learn. We're doing, at least for me, I'm doing my best to kind of work in tangent rather than instead of separate. For example, we have a big event coming up where I will be we will be simultaneously screening my a teaser for a new feature film called The Vintner, and Matt will be presenting his new release of wine. And so we're gathering, celebrities and wine lovers and connoisseurs and friends, and to kind of, when you marry the both, you can kind of simultaneously do some of the things and work together rather than you do this and then you do that. So
Yeah.
that's what we're doing so far. We'll let you know if it's successful.
And it's been nice because when you're in the entertainment industry, everyone's so wrapped up in their career that it's hard to find other topics of conversation, especially at industry events, to talk about.
Mm.
And so like Carolina's had a film it's been winning a bunch of awards. It's on the festival circuit right now. It's a short film she directed, starring her mother, actually based on her mother's story. And what's
The
been nice
Avon
is
lady.
Yes.
exactly, yes.
I can't wait to see it. I think it sounds terrific. And I love
It's
that your mom is featured. That's
Oh,
so
and she's
cool.
so good and she's
yeah.
so funny in it.
But the nice thing is she can go to these events and they'll be talking to somebody and they'll be like, so, what's going on? And she'll say, well, I'm working on this. And then, well, my husband's winery right now, we've got the next pop-up tasting room coming up. And they'll be like, I'm sorry, what?
Yes, eyes light up. They're like, it's amazing how much in the entertainment industry wine is a thing. Like it's a
Yeah.
thing. It's status. It's your knowledge of it says something about you. It's amazing how much those two are married. So, me talking about wine to my industry colleagues, and Matt talking about me to his wine colleagues, they tend to be a lot of overlap when it comes to interest. And on top of that, I think we have a little bit of a advantage in that a lot of the skills that we've gained through acting and training and all of that, we've been able to utilize in the winery business when it comes to marketing, making videos, even just when, you know, Matt goes out to sell his wine, you know, most of the time they just fall in love with him, you know, and his story, and he's just so charming, and that comes from that training. You didn't know that?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So, and then, you know, when we come together at like a festival, wine festival, and, a writer or a journalist comes in and they start learning about the wine, but I'm like, oh, they want a story. I think they would like our story. And so I start telling them our story, and they're like, oh, I think we want to write about you. So all of that is from, you know, although it's a lot, it's actually kind of lessened some of the
Yeah.
the work because we're able to use our skills that otherwise a winery might not have had.
And
Absolutely.
we're used to that lifestyle of like, oh, something just came up, we got to drop everything and go. Or
Oh yeah.
yeah, we're really good at budgeting out finances because we acknowledge it. Like we don't know when the next big wine sale or the next acting job.
Stability, what's
So,
that? Yeah.
yeah.
We've never had financial stability, so it won't shake us too much.
We're comfortable being uncomfortable.
We
Yeah.
do not understand 9 to 5 life, so that is what we're comfortable and used to, so we don't have time to get used to that.
You're perfect for the wine industry.
Oh, well, I didn't say it, but
But so I would love to know from each of you, what have been some of the favorite roles you've played, or some of the favorite films or TV shows that maybe we've heard of, or our listeners may have heard of or seen you in?
Yeah, I'll go. My favorite probably TV role right now that I've done was the most recent one I did. I played the villain in the first episode of the fourth season of Magnum PI, and
Ooh,
that was good.
that was a lot of fun. And then they found out I had a martial arts background, and so I ended up doing most of my own fight scenes, which was great. I had a huge shootout with Jay Hernandez, who's Magnum. We had a big shootout across the field, and I chased him through this building, and then, you know, we were alternating where he would fight with my stunt double while I went and shot my scenes, and then he would go shoot his scenes, and I'd fight with his stunt double, and then a couple times we got to fight together, and we were shooting at each other, and it was just a whole lot of fun. I've got a couple theater roles that were my favorites, which was I played James Leeds in Children of a Lesser God, and that opened up during that process. I became fluent in ASL and made a lot of friends in the deaf community, and this sort of world that I wasn't aware of really opened up to me, and I made some very good friends who've remained so now for 15, 16 years.
Oh, that's
great. And then I also did a play called Chinglish, um, with and again with East West Players here in LA. And I don't know anything about Chinese culture, and sort of having this thing opened up to me. You get to really have a lot of really interesting experiences as an actor that way.
It's true.
Love that.
wow.
Good stories. Love that.
And Carolina?
Well, it's interesting because I have different reasons to like certain experiences. Like one of the really cool ones was when I was on Agents of Shield, and in that episode I was touched by someone who anyone who they touched, they would turn into stone, into this very painful kind of thing for stone. And so I had to do this whole scene where I was kind of in extreme pain, but I wasn't allowed to move the thing that was my hand that was turning into stone. So they had marked my hand for CGI, and the director's like, okay, but I need more pain, but you can't move. And I'm like, okay, how am I supposed? And Ming Na Wen was so amazing to work with, and you know, I'm a big fan of her too, so to be able to work with her, it's great. And but I just love that kind of when technology marries filmmaking, and how you can allow your imagination to grow there. But actually some of the more meaty roles have been on, you know, Young and the Restless and Days of Our Lives. Those, you know, because I was there for multiple episodes, I was really to kind of able to flush out my character. But I think I have the most fun when I do commercials because it's comedy and I love comedy. I want to direct comedy. Last year I had a campaign for Amazon and Toyota, and both were comedic episodes where I had to come back multiple days to work with the same family. On Amazon, that was a bit of an exciting experience because I speak Spanish, I do both English and Spanish. And in the English side, I worked with what's his name? He's a lead actor in Fresh Off the Boat. Randall Park.
Randall Park.
He was the celebrity or not host, but the spokesperson for Amazon, and I was kind of one of the moms that he was talking to. But in the Spanish version, they had a Mexican celebrity spokesperson. And when I showed up on set that morning, they came up to me and they were like, "So how you doing today?" And I'm like, "Oh, I had lack of sleep, but I guess I'm okay." And they're like, "Okay, great. So you are now the spokesperson." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And they said, yes. So apparently there was a volcano in Mexico that shut down all the airports, and our celebrity spokesperson isn't able to come out. So we're going to need you to do it. And I'm looking at the script, pages and pages and pages. And I was calling my husband. I was like, I don't know if I could do this. I mean, I speak Spanish, but I don't know it so well to be able to be spokesperson. But it was an amazing experience. Everyone was just so grateful that I was willing to just step up and do it, that they were all helpful, and it worked out great. And so, I mean, an amazing experience, not necessarily.
She nailed it. She did. She nailed it.
And, it's not like a juicy role or anything, but the experience itself, I'm never going to forget. So, and that's the great thing about being an actor, really.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned you're working on a project called The Vintner now. Is that about your own stories?
Not even close. I hope not. So the Vintner is basically about a kind of a mad winemaker who is on a quest to create the world's greatest wine. He's French. His name is Luc. And he almost goes mad with trying to find this perfect recipe, and he just happens to stumble on literally on a dead body where the blood is seeping into the grass, and it basically he discovers that with certain components of bodily remains, it does something chemically to the wine. And in that way, he was able to take that body home, process it with his little assistant, and create the world's greatest wine. But he has to get more bodies. So it is a black comedy.
Yes.
a very, Wes Anderson kind of quirky. And it really kind of resolves itself in the end a little. I mean, there's a lot of serious different levels underneath it, but
yeah, don't give away the ending.
No, I won't.
No, please don't.
But
it's the cool thing is it's based on the idea, because 100, 200 years ago, things like bull's blood and fish bladder, which would be equivalent to the fascia in our bodies, and even sometimes ground bone meal, were used in the fining of wine. Nowadays, we found vegan options that don't need that. But so there is a legitimate traditional background for that type of thing.
Yeah, vegans are not going to like this movie or this wine.
Oh.
But it is starring Matthew Espiro Jaeger as the lead. So and I wrote it for him, because he has an amazing way to kind of depict these characters that are very passionate yet very just very focused, and I can't wait for people to see what he's going to do with this role, and we're going to shoot it at Demetria. We've already shot some scenes of the teaser there, so really, really excited about it.
Very cool. Wow, that sounds like it's amazing, and it's so cool to see creativity in acting that you can apply to winemaking and vice versa. There's one other of the wines you sent us that I'd love to talk about, and this is your Viognier.
Oh, yes.
It's from J&K Vineyard in Ballard Canyon in Santa Barbara County. And Ballard Canyon, for people listening, if you haven't been there, it's just this magical place where the Rhone varieties, such as Viognier and Syrah, just it's really home for them. And the wines coming out of there are great. And I was interested to read that you say this is your flagship wine, the one that started it all. So tell me about
Yeah.
that.
So, when people would ask me what my favorite white grape was, I would say Viognier when
Mm.
it's done right. Because sometimes Viognier can be a little flabby or be a
Mm-hmm.
little too viscous. But I think when you have a bright Viognier, it's magical. You have those beautiful honey and orange blossom notes, and it doesn't have necessarily the heaviness or even like the just baggage that Chardonnay has. Um, and in general, I tend to like older world. I have this just kind of fascination with blending old world style with new world flavors.
Hmm.
Um, and so like there's right now in the Central Coast, they're playing a lot with doing Sauvignon Blanc in a Sancerre style, which I'm really digging.
Mm.
Um, but so for the Viognier, when like I said, my first harvest was 2 barrels. It was a barrel of Syrah and a barrel of Viognier. And because at first it was just going to be Viognier. And then uh Dusty at the time, he's like, I could get a little Syrah from Kimsey Vineyard, who has a stellar reputation. I can get a little extra half ton if you want. So I like to tell him I blame him a lot for the continued growth of this winery. Um, it's like, a drug dealer being like, I got a little more if you want to try it. Uh, but it came out. We released it in June of 22. It was the first wine I'd ever made. And we were sold out 6 months later. I mean, it was gone. And so then I did it again last year. And again, this time I released it in September of 23. And we just sold the last bottles 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
So I mean, it comes in and it goes right away. And then the
Wow.
one you guys have, which is the
Mhm.
23, we had such a cool weather this last year. It got 6 extra weeks of hang time. So this was really interesting because normally when wine comes out of fermentation, you let it sit for 1 to 2 months just to settle down before you even try to think about what the flavor tastes like.
Mhm.
And this is an in-barrel fermentation. But man, it came out of fermentation. I tried it and I'm like, this thing's I can already tell what this is going to taste like, and it's tasting really good.
Oh,
So part of the reason we've released it in the spring is just because all that extra hang time really got some wonderful development going.
it's fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge Viognier fan myself, and this is really one of the better ones I've had,
Thank you.
especially in the United States. It reminds me of something coming out of the Northern Rhone, and I love the acid on it too.
Thank you. I myself enjoy higher acid wines.
Mhm.
While all my friends are running for the Barolo, I tend to run for the Barbera.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And for me, I've always said my philosophy is like acid is kind of the backbone on which you hang everything else. And so for me, that's how you build complexity. That's how you build a journey in the glass. You want the wine to change and have complexity from the front to the mid palate to the finish and all of that. And I think acid is how you sort of build that structure. And so my wines do tend to have a slightly higher acid profile. And especially with Viognier, where it can, especially here in California, if it's grown in warmer weather, can at times fall into flabbiness. Um, I tend to harvest all my grapes a little early. I tend to harvest them between 21 and 23 bricks, even the Syrah,
Oh, wow.
because I like a lighter, higher acid. And yes, Northern Rhone is very much the structure that I'm looking to fill with those beautiful California flavors and almost said odors, but and
Aromas, aromas.
no, yes, aromas. Thank you. That's the word. People usually write my lines for me. I'm not used to coming.
No, it's a great wine. It really is. All of your wines are really good.
Thank
And
you.
as a young label, a young winery, do you have do you have difficulty sourcing grapes and getting the product you need because you're not a giant production house?
Yes and no. Yes, in that you're absolutely right. We are a small winery, so I have to kind of be extra pokey on people like, hey, I really like to do this again next year. Hey, is that going to be available? And
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, well, it might be, might not be. I'll let you know when I know.
This is how what also comes into play with Matt's charm and personality is that he goes out there and he meets them and talks to them and develops relationships with them. And just like the entertainment business, it's all relationships, you
Mhm.
know, and nobody walking up saying, "Okay, can I buy your grapes?" is not going to be successful. But Matt has already built these relationships so that, you know, for example, I think one vineyard went up to him and was like, "Hey, by the way, you want some grapes?" You know, I think, I don't know if it was Dimitri or somebody,
Yeah.
you know, what it's like, even the offers start to come in. One, they trust that he's going to do something good with it, you know, but it's all about relationships and he's really good at building those.
Oh, thank you, baby. It has been very gratifying that as people try the wine, they're more interested in like, oh yeah, if you'd be interested in grapes. Jane K is my primary sourcing. Partly because they have this amazing hill that really reminds me of something out of the Northern Rhone. I mean,
Mhm.
it's the steepest hill I've ever seen in Ballard Canyon. It has something like a 200-foot rise over like a 50-foot span.
Oh,
It's
wow.
you walk, yeah, there's no machinery up there. Everything has to be done by hand. And we've gotten to the point now that during harvest, I go up there once a week and I just help out in the vineyard, and it allows me to see the grapes, to be right there on the ground, to build that relationship. And then, I also source from Karskoff Vineyards, which is run by Ryan Carr. And I actually moved, and it's nothing against Kimsey Vineyard. They make lovely grapes, but when the Syrah at J&K opened, because their Syrah is what's on the hillside, and it creates 3 different microclimates within that hill, and the hill wraps around from north to south, so you get different sun exposure on different sides, and you have so much. For me, that's how you build a lot of complexity in wine, is you have different growing conditions for the grapes all in one lot. And so I moved my order to them. And like this last harvest, I took a block from the middle, block from the bottom, block from the top, and of course wraps around the side. And then that gives me all these different components I can use when it comes time to blend and come up with the final Syrah, which is just, for me, it's so wonderful. I just love it.
That's fantastic. And I'm looking at your labels now. Tell me about the design. There's a jester hat on the F.
Yeah.
So I guess, is that playing into the other meaning of fool?
It is, yes. Yeah, if you look on the back of the label, there's a second meaning to it. And so the original, the blood meaning is the ancient meaning, the original meaning. Nowadays in Scotland, so the actual Gaelic pronunciation is Fuil or Fuil. And if someone calls you that in Scotland, they are calling you a fool. And for someone, I liked the meaning of that. I really like the look of having this very serious label with this jester cap on it. But also for a couple of people who went into acting as a career and then decided to go into winemaking, I always like to joke, well, I wanted to find something stable, so I went into winemaking.
And how now we have Fool.
Yeah. And so that concept was really great. And originally, so Carolina did the first pass on the design, and she had the hat kind of just resting on the F in sort of a jaunty angle. And it wasn't quite fitting for us, so we hired a graphic designer named Christopher Bickwell, and he came up with that final design with the fool's cap over the top. And I also just noticed, like, as I was looking around, not a lot of people had that for their imagery. And Carolina mentioned that I'm very type A, and I am. And there's a study that was done on the colors that tend to be the most popular for people to buy on a label if they don't know the wine, the shapes, things like that. And so I really tried to build the label around those colors and shapes, and then add our thumbprint, which is the fool and the fool's cap.
All these
Wow.
things you have to think about. Wow.
I know
Yeah.
it. How fun. Gosh, it's been so great. Matt and Carolina, I feel like I could talk with you all day. I want to be
Thank you very
respectful
much.
of your
We-
time. You guys are just so entertaining.
It's too bad we're all not together over a glass of wine.
Oh,
Exactly.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I do want to say, I thank you for the wines. They're just great. Your personal stories, the story of your relationship, the story of your winery and building it. I was thinking that the through line through it all is love. And it's been just such a delight hearing the two of you chatting with one another and with us and sharing your story so openly, and just a delight. So thank you.
Thank you very
thank
much. I
you.
appreciate it.
Really enjoyed this. It's very nice to relive our history.
Yeah, it is. It was a lot of fun.
It's fun. Well, thanks for letting us tell your story. And Matt, I'm so glad you reached out to me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, continued success to you both. And we will look for the vintner. And we encourage all of our listeners to look for Fuil Wines. Are you fuilwines.com?
Yep. Fuil Wines, Fuil wines.com.
Great. And we will link to that on our show notes on our website, sipsiphoorayypodcast.com.
Thank you,
Thank
ladies,
Thank you
again.
so much. We had a great
The
time.
podcast, yeah.
Great. Cheers and sip, sip, hooray.
Sip, sip, hooray.
Cheers. Well, Mary Babbitt, I am more a fool for their wines and for Matt and Carolina after listening to their stories and just how fun they are.
Yeah, don't you love them both? And honest to goodness, their wine is terrific. So I'm super excited about Fuil Wines and the future ahead for both of them.
Yes, and we will put on our website in our show notes how you can learn more about them. And we want you to go to our Substack as well. Subscribe to the podcast. That way you will get notifications on when a new episode and other bonus features drop.
You can also find us, of course, on social media, Instagram, Facebook, the usual. And we would love for you to like and share our podcasts with other people. Give us a rating. All of those things help us get the word out and find new Sip Sip Hooray listeners.
And be sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen to. So, Mary B., that wraps up another great episode. Cheers to you.
Cheers to you, Mary Orland.
Sip Sip Hooray.